I'm here on a job site with Tim, who owns his own electrical contracting business.
3 employees and 2 work trucks.
Tim traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance. We're positively here where he needs us most.
They sure are.
With step-by-step help on all his insurance needs, all for shockingly low rates.
Shockingly low, huh?
It's just a little bit of electrician humour. Do you get it?
I got it.
You know, it feels like we have a real connection. All right, I'll stop.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
I'm Elias Smeeding, Team GB long track speed skater. You're listening to the latest on the Winter Olympics from Anything But Footy.
Well, that wasn't the day we or Team GB hoped for. I'm John.
And I'm Michael. This is the latest Milano Daily from Anything But Footy. We talk about the Olympics and the Paralympics all the time, not just once every 4 years.
2 fourth places on snow, and now a match to avoid another fourth in the mixed curling that turned into a bit of a catastrophe.
But I went to see the skating, the speed skating and the figure skating here in Milan, where there were some positives for Team GB.
Tomorrow is always another day. Tomorrow's news today, we focus on skeleton.
Hi, I'm Marcus Wyatt, skeleton athlete with Team GB. You're listening to Anything But Footy with the latest on the Olympics.
I am Grant Hardie and I'm one of the Team GB curlers here in Cortina and can't wait to get started on Wednesday when we kick off the men's part of the curling Olympics.
And yes, more curling. We'll be focusing on the men's team this time.
This is Milano Daily from Anything But Footy. Download, listen, follow, pass it on to your friends and fellow Olympic fans. And there are, of course, more episodes to come in the days to come.
Hi, I'm Eve Muirhead. I'm chef de mission. You're listening to Anything But Footy with the latest on the Winter Olympics.
So, Mia Brooks, Kirsty Muir, 2 friends, 2 X Games gold medalists, 2 medal moments for Team GB, 2 medal predictions. Both finished 4th, just a few hours apart. And Team GB's Kirsty Muir narrowly missing out by 0.41 points in the women's free ski slopestyle in Livigno. The 21-year-old from Aberdeen finishing 4th, which left her in tears afterwards. She spoke to the media, spoke to her family, and then crossed Livigno Snowpark to support 19-year-old Mia Brooks, her friend, who started better than she did in qualifying the night before, safely 3rd after run 1, but 4th after run 2. What was she going to do? She was going for it. And she over-rotated in a backside 16.20 in her 3rd run. It was a trick that had never been landed in competition anywhere before. And she ended up just missing out on the medals like Muir. Japan, New Zealand and Korea winning gold, silver and bronze in the big air. The freestyle gold went to Switzerland's Mathilde Grimold, who retained the title she won in 2022. The silver was won by China's Eileen Gu, and Canada's Megan Oldham won the bronze. Afterwards, Muir said, "I need a moment to process. I don't want to dwell on it too much. At least I've got a day or so until I hit the big air." She's back in action in the free ski big air. And Brooks is back in action in the slopestyle. And I loved her quote. "I could have done a 14 and come 4th or 3rd, but I could have also done a 16.20, which I did, and I landed it and won. And I'd rather be 4th with a 16 than 4th with a 14. It was quite the day in Livigno."
Yeah, let's analyse that in a moment because I'll bring you news of the curling catastrophe. Maybe that's slightly over the top, but that is what people around here were saying. It was summed up in the words of Jen Dodge. She says, "We're disappointed. We didn't play like we'd played all week in an Olympic semi-final. You can't do that. The Swedes capitalised on our mistakes." And it was a 9-3 victory for the 2024 World Champions. Team GB beat them in the round robin, remember, and they nearly didn't qualify, the Swedes. But if you cast your mind back 4 years ago, Team GB nearly didn't qualify in the women's curling and won the gold. But now the brother and sister will face the USA for that gold medal. Bruce Mert and Jen Dodds now face the host nation, Italy, for a bronze medal. This is the same match that they lost to Japan in Beijing 4 years ago. So 2 fourths on the snow, as you say, John. Couldn't be another 4th in the curling, could it?
Oh, I mean, as I said, it was just a day, wasn't it? And I suppose what I want to talk to you about, and look, you can look at each performance and you can say, did Kirsty go for it enough? Maybe she played it a bit safe. Did Mia go too much for it, but I loved what she said about actually trying to win the thing rather than just coming fourth. And as you say, the curlers, I mean, 5 points in the sixth end. I mean, as Bruce Mowat said, that's just a bad end to an Olympic semi-final. It's not great at all. One of the listeners got in touch with us on I think it was on Insta and said, did they bottle it? No, I'm not sure that they did bottle it. I think the Swedes played absolutely brilliant, and it was a crazy competition with so many matches. At some point, you're going to be off your game. And unfortunately, it feels like it was the semi-final from a curling point of view. And I agree with you. It's not a catastrophe. It's a curling defeat. But that brings me on to what I wanted to talk to you about is, have we put too much pressure on all of this? And I include you and me in that. We were talking about Magic Monday. We were getting caught up in it. We had Dame Catherine Granger telling us we're going to win more medals than the medals ambition on Sunday. Did we put too much pressure on? Did we preview it too much?
Two things. One, I'll address the comment that we got on Insta. And I think it was a little bit harsh for me because it said the actual phrasing was, why do the Brits always bottle it under pressure? And that was a comment about the curling, which is addressed to two people, one of which has an Olympic gold medal and one of which has an Olympic silver medal. So I just don't think you can level the accusation that they bottle it at all times at people that have an Olympic gold medal and an Olympic silver medal. They didn't do it in the mixed doubles last time, and they didn't do it in the mixed doubles this time. They still could win a bronze medal, which would be a good achievement. So I think that comment was slightly over the top, slightly harsh. It reminded me a little bit of that angry football fan when their team aren't playing well that kind of lose a little bit of perspective.
But we've built this up and built this up and built this up over days and days and days.
We didn't.
No. I'm saying the media.
But we've been told to do that. We haven't just plucked that out of thin air. We have been briefed, if you like, or informed that this was a possibility. You know, you and I have sat through 2 or 3 different presentations, and we have spoken to a lot of coaches and a lot of team leaders. We spoke to the chair of the British Olympic Association. These are the people that have all the data. These are the people that have been following this, as have we. And, you know, we've been looking at World Cup results and X Games results, and everything was pointing towards, and everything we were being told was pointing towards this might happen. It's not a coincidence that most of the British media headed to Livigno yesterday, because they had all been sat through the same presentations and read the same notes and been told the same things and followed the same stuff that we had. We weren't just plucking this idea of a Magic Monday out of thin air. It was informed based on results. And when you go back to that presentation that we sat through with UK Sport in the centre of London a few weeks ago, they are a very data-driven organisation, as are Team GB. They track the results. They track the results of their opposition. And that is where this idea came from, that there were 3 big medal hopes yesterday. But as everyone has always been telling us, in sport and in winter sport especially, there's some very, very thin lines. And yesterday, Team GB just went the wrong side of those thin lines.
And also, I know that everything is stat driven in today's world, and you have to even just look at football that we don't talk about how much that's changed, and from when Sir Alex Ferguson was in charge, where he just went with his gut, but now it's all about physicality and making sure people run and all the stats of that. But in, say, Kirsty Muir's event, no one really was talking about Megan Kelly, and she delivers a brilliant second run, or a brilliant first run. The second run, she actually crashed and then got herself back up and delivered an even better third run. So no one really saw her part of it. We all knew Eileen Gu and obviously Grimold, the defending champion. So that is the thing with sport, isn't it? Yes, you can look at the stats, but it's the uncertainty as well, that no one really knows what will happen, which I know is what Catherine Granger said to us. That's why we love sport, is we don't know the answers. But I go back to, do we spend too much time previewing everything these days? Everything is a preview. This could happen. This might happen. If this happens, this is what happens. If Mia Brooks wins a medal, she's the youngest ever. No, actually, let's wait until she's won the medal before declaring that she is the youngest medal ever, because she's still not an Olympic medalist. But that is, if you read all articles or anything online yesterday, she could become the youngest medalist, but she hasn't.
Right. One point, Canada's Megan Oldham, you said, flew under the radar. No one was talking about her. I shared the train home, and I told you yesterday, didn't I? People are talking to each other on the trains in Milan. That's what happens in an Olympic city. The Canadians thought Megan Oldham might win a medal. It's in our world that we perhaps didn't look at what was happening around the world, and that is something I think we could do better. And I mean you and me. Potentially. I think we are very focused on what our British athletes are doing. We are following them every weekend in their World Cup results. But apart from a handful of the global superstars, I don't think we are following what is happening in other countries as closely as perhaps we should. It's an impossible job in the Olympics and the Paralympics. What are we going to do? Follow every nation in 40 different sports? It's just impossible to do. But the Canadians I spoke to, they were all happy for Megan Oldham about that, and we had that conversation. We are always previewing things. Someone once said this to me, a news editor once said this to me back in the day when I worked on local TV news. You spend a lot of time previewing things and not actually a lot of time on reporting the actual event, if that makes sense. And that's maybe just I think where we are in the media landscape so much. I think if football, rugby, cricket, boxing, whatever wasn't so omnipresent on all the media platforms, then actually you've got a duty to report it a little bit more. But because it's all there, it's all laid out, and you've got so much airtime to fill before it, that's why we do all the preview.
How does Team GB react to this? This is my slight concern. So we've talked about the media side of it. We've talked about the briefing part of it. From a leadership point of view, what I've always been told is don't get too high, don't get too low. When we were in charge of radio stations, don't get too high with the big radar numbers, which are your listening figures, because sometimes you're going to get a bad one. But obviously plans are in place, as we've talked about. Dame Catherine Granger. We know Eve Muirhead have been talking about this. Everybody was talking about this day. But how do we move on from here, and how does it impact on the athletes? It is now the leadership's job, Eve Muirhead, Dame Catherine Granger, for Team GB, that this actually doesn't become a kind of day. And actually, the curlers bounce back and win the bronze medal. I mean, that's the easiest way of doing it. But how can the leadership team influence that?
Talking from experience, I mean, Eve Muirhead will no doubt talk about how close her team were to going out in the curling 4 years ago. And there were many times during that campaign where we thought, it was done, it was dusted, and they were going to go home without a medal, but they ended up with the gold medal. I don't think the leadership team will be pressing any panic buttons. I think there'll be obvious disappointment. First and foremost, I think there'll be disappointment amongst the leadership team for the athletes involved and their teams. But they both have another chance to win a medal, of course. And I think that's actually really, really useful. And I think that is where the psychologists and everything else will come in, which is to say, look, you've finished fourth today, and fourth in the world is brilliant. we get away.
After 2 weeks ago, winning gold medals in the X Games, which are just as important in skiing and snowboarding than the Olympic Games. I know we're Olympic focused, but they're not.
Yeah, we've been told that as well. X Games for a lot of these athletes is actually the one that they really want to win. That's the one they grew up following. They didn't grow up wanting necessarily to be an Olympic medalist. So also knowing the athletes involved a little bit, and I messaged you with this yesterday, they're all quite chill, aren't they? And I know Kirsty was dreadfully upset yesterday. I like to think that Kirsty's woken up this morning having slept on it, had a bowl of a Quaker Oats, Team GB porridge partner, and is now doubly determined to go and do well in her second event and is supported with the team around them. There's still plenty of medal opportunities, and I don't think we should be pressing the panic button just yet.
But there is another fourth to talk about, and that came in the figure skating, in the ice dance.
Worried about that one yet.
Do you want to tell us about it? Because you spent your day at the skating, as you say, speed skating, and of course the figure skating last night.
Yeah, so I went over to see Lilah Fear and Lewis Gibson last night at the figure skating arena. It was the first night of the individual ice dance. We also had another British pair in there. That was Phoebe Becker and James Hernandez. So last night was the rhythm ice dance. So all the couples, I think there was 23 in total, and the top 20, they go through to the free dance. So with the rhythm dance, what we had last night was a 90s themed rhythm dance, which meant that we got to hear Right Said Fred's I'm Too Sexy twice, as if my week couldn't have got any worse. I had to sit through that.
My wife
twice.
was like, they've already danced to this. I was like, it's a different couple.
Different couple. So yeah, it was so Phoebe and James went down the George Michael route. Lilah and Lewis, as we know, went down the Spice Girls route. Phoebe and James were third up on the ice. They scored 72.46, which was their best performance of the season, and that pretty much already guaranteed them within a couple of pairs a place in that free dance later on in the week. And I spoke on the way back to a couple of people that know Phoebe and James and said, they will be absolutely thrilled with that they performed their best at the Olympic Games. They've qualified for the next section of the competition. And I think Phoebe and James, over the next 4 years, if they continue with what they're doing, we'll be talking about them as medal contenders by the time we come to the French Alps. The two we are talking about as medal contenders this time, of course, Lilah Fear and Lewis Gibson. And in one of those weird Olympic coincidences, who am I sat on a train with, but loads of people wearing a load of Team GB stuff. I went, are you off to see Lilah and Lewis? And they went, yeah. And I went, are you just fans? What's the situation? And often at the Olympic Games, when you see big groups of people clearly going to support one person, you can put two and two together. And yes, it was her family. So Georgia and Sasha, her two sisters, were there. I had a great chat with her grandmother, Anne.
Who is her biggest fan?
Who's just fantastic, her biggest fan. I know Lilah was quoted at the afterwards by saying that she caught the eye of her family in the crowd, and that's when the tears came. And her biggest fan, Anne, was there. We got into the arena, but they were obviously really worried that they were going to miss Lilah and Lewis. But I don't think there was any problem with that because they were on quite late, 10:30 Milan time. But had a great chat with them. And the thing that Anne, Lilah's grandmother, said to me, she says, when you are bringing up children, all you want from your children is that they turn out to be good people. And so she said to me, in your experience, the time you've spent with Lilah and Lewis, which obviously clearly not as much as her, but those brief moments when sometimes, you can be under a little bit of pressure or whatever else, stress when you're dealing with the media. In my experience, they brought Lilah up. They haven't brought Lewis up, but they brought Lilah up. But Lilah and Lewis are good people. So to the action, they have qualified fourth. So it wasn't their best performance of the Spice Girls medley.
They looked a little disappointed.
Yeah, and I think
with the score anyway.
Yeah, I think there was one or two little bits that weren't as clean as
in the twizzles
as they could be. It was a long night for them, and I know that they're used to that. That's what happens at major championships, but they've obviously competed in the team event as well. So I definitely think any cobwebs, any nerves now they will have got out of their system. It was interesting as well. They said that they've heard from the Spice Girls. They've heard from Torvill and Dean. That's all anyone wants to talk to them about, by the way, the Spice Girls and Torvill and Dean. But they're embracing it. 'Cause if that's what it means to bring eyeballs onto their sport, and then they're going for it.
Have they heard from the Proclaimers ahead of Wednesday?
And that's my next question. Next time I see them, have they heard from the Proclaimers? So, yeah, they're through. Look, they're there in fourth. We think they're going to finish between third and fifth, maybe. We think that is the group that they're in, third, fourth, fifth, something like that. We think there's a bronze medal there. We would both think it's unlikely that they will go and win a medal better than bronze.
Well, I think the Americans were disappointed with their score because they're second. And again, what we were saying about people coming from nowhere and where are they statistically? And then, of course, you've got this French dancer who's the defending champion, Guillaume Citron, who got a new partner in the last year and has just come from nowhere. And they skate very early on in the evening, didn't they, yesterday? But they lead the leaderboard and they're ahead of the Americans with his new partner, of course, Lance Fournier-Baudry. They look exceptional. They danced to Madonna's Vogue. It was spotless, and you can see why he's an Olympic champion. So suddenly, when you're coming into the games, as you say, you've got Lilah and Lewis, who you think third, fourth, maybe a second. But then you've got this French couple who've just suddenly come from nowhere. They won the European Championships, and now they're in the Olympics, and they're leading going into the free dance.
Yeah, I think I think a bronze medal is where the aim, the ambition is for Lilah and us. Of course, they go out onto the ice and anything could happen. Anything could happen with them. Anything could happen with one of their competitors. But yeah, the bronze medal, and as we have discussed numerous times, I still think that would be a massive moment, a monumental moment, matching what Torvill and Dean did in Lillehammer in 1994.
How will you feel? I think I know how they would feel, but how would you feel if they finished fourth?
I think I would be gutted for them personally on a personal level, because I think they both know how important a medal in this sport and how important a medal is with those guys having had so much attention. I think in due course, I think I'd realise, or we would realise, what an amazing achievement is that 32 years on, we've finally got a pair of figure skaters who are back competitive. And I think we would feel that there'd been a slightly missed opportunity there, that they have dropped a place from where they were at the World Championships a year ago.
Maybe a debate for another episode in Milano Daily, but in a lot of World Cup competitions, World Championships, you sometimes get a third versus fourth playoff, or you get the top four. They're the ones who get celebrated. In the Olympics, it's always the top three. It's always gold, silver, and bronze. But maybe, and that's why we forget about the fourths. But there were so many British athletes who finished fourth in an Olympics, and as you say, are the fourth best in the world, and we forget about them. Maybe it's a debate that maybe we should create another colour that they could be given when they finish fourth. Let's not do it now because we're going to run out of time. But
I'm just my daughter's just been moved into top set in chemistry, so I'll get her to send me a periodic table and find out a slightly less precious metal than bronze.
Good idea. One of the other listeners got in touch. Adele said that about Mia and, of course, Kirsty and Lilah and Lewis as well. Look, they're young. They've worked so hard. They're so entertaining. They can all go again. And I think that's something that we, as old seasoned journalists, probably need to remember sometimes.
And they were fourth. Kirsty and Mia were fourth best in the world.
Exactly.
I mean, I know we were top of the Olympic podcast charts for a while. We were the best Olympic podcast in the world to listen to, but still being fourth is amazing.
This is Milano Daily. Tomorrow's news today and the other news from the games, because we cover the Olympics all the time, not every 4 years. It's coming up next.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, I'm Lilah Fear.
And I'm Lewis Gibson, and you're listening to Anything But Footy,
with the latest on the Winter Olympics.
This is Anything But Footy, Milano Daily. It is day 4. In other news from the games, a second alpine skiing gold for Franjo van Olmen of Switzerland, with victory in the men's team combined. He's certainly proving to be an early start of these games, the 24-year-old with 2 gold medals already on the slopes. Italy qualified for the women's ice hockey quarterfinals for the very first time. Always good for the home nation, beating Japan 3-2. Canada and the USA face each other in Group A later. Might be worth watching that. That's on this evening. And the Netherlands, Jutta Leerdam, delivered a record-breaking performance to win gold in the women's 1,000 metres, setting an Olympic record of 1 minute and 12.31 seconds at the Milano Speed Skating Stadium. It was a 1-2 for the Dutch.
And I was there, actually. I went to the speed skating and it was all orange. I mean, even as the train was edging closer to the venue, everybody getting on that train was decked out in Netherlands colours. It was, if you're a Dutch athlete, what they do is they come out and do a bit of a warm-up for half an hour or so before the actual competition begins. If you'd just come out, you would have thought you were competing in Amsterdam or Rotterdam. I mean, bigger cheers for the Dutch than there were for anybody else, even the Italians, actually. Wow. Jutta Leerdam, a lot of people will know that she's actually the girlfriend of Jake Paul, the YouTuber turned boxer. So a lot of people were talking about that, or have been talking about that as well. But I'm going to talk about Elia Schmeeding, who was just 0.004 seconds off a top 10 finish. So again, I mean, 11th in the world, so close to being top 10. I saw her very briefly afterwards, and she looked, a little bit downcast, a little bit downbeat. I think she felt that she could break into that top 10.
She actually put a little sad emoji on our Insta.
Just about to say, I know you posted it on our social media feed, and she put a little sad crying tear face, wasn't it, on there? So, yeah, I think for her there was that little touch of disappointment. I know when we'd spoken to her, I'm not sure she genuinely thought she could win a medal, although it is one of those sports where, it can happen. Not so much, it has to be said, in long track, because it's time trial, so it's not just the crazy going for it mass starts. She will have another event, the 1,500 meters, later on in the games as well. But yeah, terrific to get down there and see some speed skating and some figure skating yesterday. So going to go and try and see some ice hockey at some point, although our main focus today will be on the curling.
Yes, indeed. And actually, you mentioned short track that actually starts today, as we heard from Niall Tracy in a previous episode of Milano Daily. So on to tomorrow's news today, our TNT slot. Looking ahead to tomorrow, day 5 of the Olympics. And we're going to talk skeleton to start with, because actually the training sessions, the official training sessions, are taking place as we speak. We had the first yesterday, and some good news for Great Britain, because Tabby Stoker was fastest in training session 1, with the German Jacqueline Pfeiffer in second, and then Stoker was second and Pfeiffer first in the second run. So looking good for there. Amelia Coltman third and sixth, Freya Tarbet fourth fastest in both heats. So that looks good from a British point of view in the women. And in the men's, Matt Weston was second quickest to, and again, an Italian, Bagnis, in heat 1. Everyone's talking about the Germans, and suddenly the Italian, who practices on this course all the time, was the fastest down there. And Matt Weston then in the second heat was fastest, and Bagnis was second. Marcus Wyatt finished his first training runs in 9th and 8th position. And he was in good form when I caught up with him earlier in Cortina last week.
Just loving being back in the Olympic environment. It's special. We work, 4 years to get to this. Once every 4 years, and it's really cool to be back in the environment and seeing being part of Team GB, surrounded by all these athletes at the top of their game. It's what we aim for. So it's really, really cool.
What about the track as well? Because I know you had success there last year.
Yeah, track. We slid for the first time yesterday. The ice is, really just super smooth as you'd hope for. So I think yesterday in training we weren't quicker than the race times. Track's in great condition. It's everything you want from an Olympics so far.
Does the track differ, Marcus? Because I think I read somewhere that you have favourite tracks.
Yeah, absolutely. So not only does the track. So when we've come back this time, we're expecting the ice to look slightly different, just over the course of 4 or 5 months as the kind of water is sprayed on and freezes, and it's shaped by the track workers, it can change. So you come here knowing that your notes from 4 months ago could be anywhere from 80% to 99% correct, but it's a case of walking down the track, looking at it all again, looking at it with a fresh mind and thinking, oh, okay, this corner's changed, that corner's the same. And then you do the same with your first couple of runs. It's a bit of like a bit of a recce again to kind of get up to speed and kind of have those initial conversations with the coaches being like, oh yeah, actually that I did the same as I did 4 months ago, which sounds crazy, but got a different outcome. And you kind of, so you start building those pieces from day one.
And I found out today there are 2 British teams for the mixed team relay as well. So with only 2 men, I assume you will be part of that team.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, barring disaster. Which is really cool. And we've first time in history that Skeletons had 2 events. It puts us on parity, I think, with bobsleigh and luge. So I mean, any other shot at a medal is something to not be missed.
And you guys have been incredibly successful as a team. I think you were the World Cup champions, weren't you?
Yeah, we were the World Cup champions, which it shows that strength and depth that we have at the moment through both the men and the women's program. So again, it's as good a medal shot as probably any other skeleton event or team, really.
I know we've spoken about Beijing and we've moved on from that, but individually, what are you looking to achieve this time in Cortina?
Yeah, I think I'm coming in the form of my life. I am feeling confident. I'm sliding and physically as good as I've been. So for me, I'm absolutely aiming for a gold. I would not be upset with a medal, but I think the gold is possible, and it feels a bit crazy to say that, but I've worked for 10, 11 plus years to put myself in this position. So why not go all out for the gold one and see what happens?
How difficult is it that your main rival is a British fellow athlete?
If anything, it makes it a bit easier. Do you know what? I think because we work so closely, we help each other. Like already we've been sharing notes on the track. He'd be like, oh, I think this, and I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. What about this? And we're kind of bouncing ideas off each other. And I certainly wouldn't be doing that with any of the other nations. So we're so used to working together and pushing each other. And yeah, on the day, it's him versus the clock and it's me versus the clock. So it's kind of, I can't affect him, he can't affect me, but we're both gonna do what we can to put ourselves in the best place on race day. And we know that's sharing ideas and sharing information. So yeah, I know it's a really unusual but really special and lucky scenario that we're in.
So that's John speaking to Marcus Wyatt ahead of the beginning of the skeleton at the Cortina Sliding Centre. This is TNT, tomorrow's news today. Just keeping you ahead of the game so you can show off to your friends about what you know about the Olympic Winter Games. Also could be known as 3 weeks of curling. After the mixed doubles event, the men's and the women's teams start. And again, it will be a round robin preliminary stage, and then we'll go into the knockouts. So the men begin Wednesday evening, 6:05 at the Cortina Curling Stadium. Sweden, remember, are the defending champions. They beat Bruce Mowat and the boys in Beijing in the final 4 years ago. Canada have won more curling men's gold medals than anyone else, but they haven't been on top of the podium in more than a decade. Great Britain are looking to be the first men's Olympic curling champions since the first ever games in Chamonix in 1924. They start their campaign against China. And one of the members of Bruce Mowat's team, Grant Hardie, has arrived in Cortina ahead of competition just a few days ago.
It's a long time ago we got selected. We're one of the kind of first teams to be selected, and really allowed us to kind of plan and prepare. And driving up to Cortina yesterday was quite a kind of special feeling. You compare it to 4 years ago in Beijing where it was COVID, and just we're still excited to be going to your first games, but the feeling and the buzz around the village here is way different, and yeah, cannot wait to get started.
I'm obviously in Milan at the moment, but there's a great Olympic feeling in the city. What is it like in Cortina? It feels like a Winter Games, if you know what I mean, I guess.
Yeah, likewise. I think obviously it snowed last week, so there's a nice covering of snow, and as you're driving up the mountains, you see the kind of backdrop, you see the big air. And you can see the bobsleigh track on the way down as well. So it really feels like an Olympics. And you sense that second you walk into the village, everyone's kind of buzzing about the place and excited. And yeah, I think everyone's just really excited to get started and showcase the sport.
So let's talk about you guys. You come into this in terrific form yourself, and there must be part of you that glows bright, wanting just to get that another notch up on the podium from where you were 4 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. Not just in a lot of form at the moment, a lot of form in the last kind of 2 years. It's just been a really kind of hot run for us. And we're also kind of, we're aware that it can come down to one game as well. The Europeans, for example, in October, really dominant round robin, won all 9 games, and then really slack performance in the semi and had to settle for a bronze. So we're aware that can happen again, but we're also trying to learn a lot from that experience because ice conditions changed and we know that can happen. And it's just, putting yourself in those positions can hopefully help us and kind of make us, more aware of those situations and be prepared to still bring a high performance even when things go against you.
And when you have been in such great form, where do you sit in terms of that spectrum from confidence, but a bit of pressure and a target on your back?
Yeah, and there's pressure, there's expectation. We put it on ourselves, we expect it from everyone back home, but also probably quite a kind of quiet team on the ice and we go about our business, but you do feed off confidence. We're playing our best when we're relaxed, confident, and just kind of going through doing our thing rather than kind of getting too worked up about the situation. So we'll be trying really hard to remind ourselves of that this week and, hope we can enjoy the whole experience and remind ourselves of that is when we play our best.
And just finally, how much do you take from the fact that at home, everybody will be watching, everybody loves your sport, everybody becomes an expert and everyone will be willing you on?
Yeah, and again, watching from home, we've seen it this week as well. The whole nation gets behind you, and as much as this is just 1-2 weeks, for us, it's really a 4-year period where the whole nation is behind us because everyone that plays the National Lottery is contributing to us being able to go out there and perform and chase these dreams. So yeah, having that support from the whole nation is huge, and to see it during the games when you see the whole nation supporting, getting behind curling, watching it when they know nothing about it and try and pick it up. It's great to see as a curler, and gives you even more reason to try and deliver a medal for Great Britain.
So that was me speaking to Grant Hardie, head of the beginning of the men's team curling competition. So we've mentioned Team Mowat, Bruce Mowat, Grant Hardie, Bobby Lammy and Hammy McMillan. Cousins in there, of course, Grant and his cousin competing together there. GB start against China. The other matches at the beginning of that round robin stage: Sweden against Italy, Canada against Germany, Czechia against the USA.
We like to hear from the listeners, as we always do. Thanks to Dominic, who got in touch after yesterday's pod, who was backing you, Michael, in what you were saying about OBS, delivering the pictures of the Lindsey Vonn crash. He says the International Ski Federation, FIS, have exactly the same policy as you were talking about in UK football. But of course, the OBS, as you say as well, is an independent of the FIS. So he's sort of saying it depends who the editor was, and described it as a difficult situation if you're not in ski racing week in, week out. Needless to say, he says, another example of proving why alpine ski racing is one of the most dangerous sports in the world, something that we have to remember with these Olympics continuing. He also said, love the pod and come on Team GB. And I think that's a great way to finish today, isn't it?
Don't forget, you can find us, and we'd love your messages about what we say. Maybe you agree with us, maybe you disagree with us, maybe you've got some thoughts on some of what we've been bringing you today in the podcast. You can find us on social media. You can check us out online as well. We do have a message us page on our website, anythingbutfooty.com, and you can sit and tap that message away whilst listening to the Olympics music playlist on Spotify. This is Milano Daily from Anything But Footy.
Hi, I'm Chris McCormick. You're listening to Anything But Footy with the latest on the Winter Olympics.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Tap the banner to learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.